The name Karen Matthews is one that I will endeavor to erase from my memory for the remainder of my days. I am Roger Turner, and I was married to Karen for a period of 20 years. As is the case with the majority of husbands who are unaware of the facts, I believe that our marriage was a good one until I discovered otherwise. Karen and I were two working-class children from the municipal area. We attended the same school, although we had different groups of friends. We were acquainted with each other, but did not begin dating until a few years after our schooling had concluded. At the time, Karen was employed as a lawyer's secretary, and I was in the initial stages of launching my own business. My enterprise focused on the development and hosting of websites, with the majority of revenue generated from two comparison sites. One was designed for insurance, while the other was for price checking. By the time Karen and I got married, I had already amassed a considerable fortune. To safeguard my business interests, my lawyer recommended a prenuptial agreement. This stipulated that, in the event of a dissolution of the marriage for any reason, Karen would receive a percentage of my personal estate. A percentage of my personal estate. I was under the impression that we would be together for life, so I was agreeable to the terms of the prenuptial agreement. Karen was aware that regardless of the circumstances, she would be financially secure. Despite our disparate career paths, we were adept at a singular activity, sexual intercourse. Karen was insatiable throughout our marriage. She demanded sexual intercourse 4 times a week, on average. Our eldest son was born 19 months after the wedding. 4 years later, twins were born. The only point of contention between Karen and me was the choice of names for our 3 sons. Karen was drawn to names with biblical undertones, a choice that I found unnecessary given our lack of religious affiliation. We did, however, agree on the name Robert for our eldest child. 4 years later, we named the twins Ethan and Luke. Despite our demanding careers, we consistently made time on weekends to spend together as a family. We resided in a pleasant family home situated in a desirable area, surrounded by affable neighbors. We were frequently invited to social events hosted by business associates and a few minor celebrities. However, we often declined these invitations to prioritize spending time with our children. My business expanded significantly, reaching a point where I had 40 employees. Don Hill served as my executive director and second-in-command, while the rest of the staff consisted of either technical specialists or financial workers. As any employer can attest, it is challenging to find and retain highly qualified employees in the current job market. I was consistently motivated to implement strategies that would facilitate the retention of my employees. Annually, on their birthdays, I offered them a day off with pay, along with the provision of lunch for the employee and their spouse or partner. I subsequently made the decision to extend a private healthcare package to all employees. This package afforded them the advantage of receiving urgent treatment without having to queue in the NHS, National Health Service of England. The package's inclusivity extended to immediate family members. The employees expressed gratitude for this gesture, which constituted part of the healthcare package. There was a health check every 2 years, with a month remaining until my 45th birthday. I received an invitation for a medical examination, which I accepted, intending to set a positive example for my employees. The doctor inquired about my lifestyle, including whether I smoked and drank. He also conducted the standard set of checks, such as measuring height, weight, and blood pressure. Furthermore, the doctor requested blood and urine samples. The doctor then informed me that the tests would be conducted and that, should any issues arise, would be contacted. I returned to work with the knowledge that I appeared healthy and fit. In the evening, Karen and I discussed our son Robert's upcoming 18th birthday. We ultimately decided to throw him a party. After some deliberation, we settled on a venue. We both agreed that we did not want to host an event where underage individuals would be consuming alcohol. 2 days prior to the planned celebration, I was informed that individuals of a certain age were present in my residence. I was subsequently contacted by a medical professional who wished to discuss the results of my recent medical tests. I inquired as to the potential implications of the results, and the doctor reassured me that it was not a cause for immediate concern. Mr. Turner, the issue is that you appear to have hemochromatosis. Given that you lead a relatively healthy lifestyle, you do not exhibit any overt symptoms. With the appropriate medication, we can effectively manage the condition. Do you have any insight into how I contracted it? Unfortunately, it is a hereditary condition. Mr. Turner, the symptoms of this condition vary considerably from one individual to another. Some men experience chronic internal pain, while others live without pain but are infertile. You fall into the latter category. It is a hereditary condition. I will have my sons undergo the necessary examinations. Doctor, did you just inform me that I am infertile? Yes, Mr. Turner. The test results indicate that you are sterile. Based on our experience, I would say that you have always been sterile. From the expression on his face, I understood what he was thinking. The doctor told me about the medications he prescribed. Fortunately, he gave me a few pamphlets to read, but I was still shaken, so I heard little of what he was telling me. I had planned to return to the office by the end of the day, but instead I headed home while Karen was at work and the boys were at school. I had time to think, setting aside self, it is regrettable that I scheduled urgent testing for the boys if they were not my biological sons. I was eager to obtain answers from my wife during dinner that evening. I provided her with a detailed explanation of what I had learned that day. The boys were supportive of the decision to undergo testing, but Karen was not as enthusiastic. Given that the boys' well-being was the primary concern, I was perplexed by her lack of enthusiasm. Regardless of Ken's opinion, I took the boys for testing 2 days after the party. The subsequent period was marked by a sense of anticipation and distress as we awaited the results. Upon receiving them, I experienced a complex emotional response. The doctor instructed me to have a seat, and I inquired about the nature of my condition. Despite my awareness that everything was normal, I was still grappling with a sense of unease. After extensive testing, it was observed that none of the sons exhibited any indications of hemochromatosis. However, the samples remained available for further analysis. Consequently, a DNA test was conducted by the laboratory. It was noted that this request was made in light of concerns previously expressed at a previous meeting. The results of the test indicated that I then informed him that the test results indicated that he was not the biological father of his sons. I immediately stood up and began to pace back and forth, agitated by this revelation. I then inquired as to whether all 3 boys had the same father, to which he replied in the affirmative. The test results confirmed that the father of all 3 boys was, in fact, the same man. As you were previously unaware of your condition, I assume your wife was also uninformed. My wife was not aware of the full circumstances, and I did not disclose the details of my infertility. I had hoped that the boys would be mine. I am sorry, Mr. Turner. I nodded, and asked if I could have a printed copy of the DNA results. A copy of the DNA results is required in the near future. I thanked the doctor and left the office. I might have considered returning home, but today I decided to return to the office as soon as I entered. Don realized something was wrong and followed me into my office and closed the door. What is the problem, Roger? It appeared that Don had been informed of the unfortunate news. I proceeded to explain the situation in detail to Don. Good Lord, Roger, what are you going to do about this? Don inquired. I see 2 potential courses of action, I replied. The first is to remain silent and continue to portray myself as a clueless and ignorant husband. The second is to confront Karen. However, I anticipate that this course of action may ultimately result in a divorce. For 20 years, I have lived in a state of deception. I believe that the boys were mine. It is important to remain calm, Roger. I am confident that there is a logical explanation for this. Perhaps Karen will be able to provide clarity on this matter tonight. I will leave you in charge for a few days while I work to resolve this issue. I am sorry, Roger. Take as much time as you need. I will contact you if there is a situation that I am unable to resolve. Don returned to his office, and I remained in the room, contemplating how to mentally process this challenging situation. I estimated that Karen would receive approximately $2 million if we were to divorce, given that I was worth 10 times more. I consulted with my lawyer for advice, as he primarily worked with corporate clients, and suggested Arthur Kaw as a potential legal counsel. Kaw was a lawyer with a traditional approach to the legal system. Turner expressed uncertainty about his decision. He inquired about the possibility of his wife influencing the outcome. When informed that she would not be able to do so, Turner requested to receive the documents once they were prepared. In court tomorrow, my secretary Marin will deliver the documents to you. I thanked Arthur and took my leave. I drove around the neighborhood until it was time to return home. Upon entering the house, I observed that the twins were watching television and Karen was preparing dinner. I inquired about Robert's whereabouts and was informed that he was staying with a friend that evening, leaving us to dine as a family of 4. Dinner was served that evening. Karen smiled. I was curious as to whether her demeanor would remain unchanged following our discussion. After dinner, the twins retired to their rooms, loading the dishwasher. I joined Karen in the living room. We engaged in a thought-provoking conversation with the doctor. The topic was the boys. Karen responded in a composed manner. The hereditary condition that I have exhibited after all the tests was not evident in the results, which seemed unusual. The puzzle was solved when the doctor conducted the DNA test, which revealed that the boy's DNA did not match mine. I then inquired if you could explain this phenomenon. Karen sat silently and looked at me for a minute, and I had no further comments regarding the boys. Aren't yours? I inquired. I fell in love with someone else shortly after our wedding. My love was so strong that I wanted his children. When we were trying to conceive a child, I used a diaphragm until I was with him. Karen replied almost emotionlessly, if you fell in love with someone else, why didn't you divorce me and go play Happy Families? Given that he was already married and had children, it seems that my decision not to pursue fertility treatments was the correct one. Had we not become parents, we would never have done so. I am astonished to hear this news. It appears that you became pregnant with another man's child because you fell in love with him. This means that we have been living in a state of denial for 20 years have passed, yet I still love you, Roger. I simply loved another man more. Otherwise, you would not have had children with him. I am going to be away for a while, I cannot bear to be around you right now. Tonight, I will sleep in the spare room and then leave the house in a state of agitation. After a few drinks at the pub, I returned home to find Karen sitting and watching TV. I ignored her. She proceeded to the spare room, feigning slumber. Approximately 30 minutes later, she knocked on the door. I proceeded to shower, dress, and depart the residence without uttering a word. At a later point in time, Karen sent me a message inquiring about my well-being. I replied, and Karen did not respond. I subsequently met with Dawn and spent the morning searching for a property to purchase. Later that same day, I collected the divorce papers when I arrived at the house. Karen was alone. She smiled when I entered. I inquired about the whereabouts of the boys. Robert is out again, and the twins are with my parents, as we need to talk. I thought it would be preferable if the boys were not present. I am grateful that you assumed I would return home, although I am not. I am uncertain as to the nature of the discussion we should engage in. I will therefore go upstairs to change my clothes while you peruse this document. I then proceeded to leave Karen standing with her arms folded and a defiant expression on her face. When I returned to the kitchen, I observed that she was still there. I then asked her about the divorce. She confirmed that she was indeed divorcing Roger. She had previously informed me that she loved another man more than she loved me. You loved him so much that you bore his children, yet I still love you, Roger. However, I am unable to love you in the same way that you love him. My infertility does not change my feelings. If we had known about it back then, we could have adopted you and left him. We could have become pregnant by him without my consent. As far as I know, you are still having sexual relations with him. Divorce is the only way out for me. The only viable solution for me, Karen, is that you will receive $2 million, as stipulated in the prenuptial agreement. When I mentioned that Karen was still engaging in sexual intercourse with him, she looked at the floor, which conveyed a great deal of information. This is my house, Karen, so you are required to vacate the premises and find a new place to live. I will provide the necessary funds for your relocation. These expenses will be deducted from your $2 million. In the meantime, I will stay in a hotel. With regard to child support, Karen almost shouted, since Robert is already over 18, it is irrelevant whether you require child support for the twins. You should inquire with their father, whoever he may be. You are making a significant error in judgment, Roger. You are listed as the boy's father, therefore you are obliged to provide for them. I made a mistake marrying you, Karen. I am compelled to inquire as to the identity of the boy's father. I am not in a position to divulge this information, as it would have no impact on the circumstances at hand. You have elected to proceed with the dissolution of your marriage. I proceeded to the upper floor to pack my belongings. I had intended to stay in a hotel for a few nights until I had resolved the outstanding issues. Karen was seated at the table, weeping, as I carried the suitcases downstairs. I will return for my belongings in a day or two. That should be sufficient for a few days. I did not wait for a response. I located an apartment that I could rent for 2 months, hoping that would be all I needed it for. It also provided Karen with the opportunity to find accommodation. Karen called me on several occasions, requesting that I reconsider, but after the last call, which was particularly, the atmosphere was palpably tense. My lawyer informed me that she had signed and returned the divorce papers. I was granted a month to vacate the house. Robert called to express his discontent with his mother. He inquired as to whether he could move in with me once I had secured alternative accommodation. I informed Robert that, in that case, the arrangement would be reversed, and his mother would be required to leave the house. I attempted to contact Ethan and Luke to discuss the situation, but they refused to speak with me. I overheard Luke expressing his hatred for me on one occasion while speaking with Robert. Karen called him, and he proceeded to berate her on speakerphone. Robert demanded that she show him respect, emphasizing that he was her father. Robert paused, visibly taken aback by her response. At the phone, "You brought this on yourself. You destroyed this family. I want nothing to do with you or the sperm donor you call my father. Stay away from me and don't call me again. You're nothing but a wicked witch." Robert pressed the button to end the call. He advised her that she could go to hell. "Robert, I have no desire to interact with her in any capacity. I hope the twins will recognize her as a malevolent figure and establish their independence when the time is right." Karen secured a residence for herself and the twins, leaving a room for Robert, though he did not intend to occupy it. I was present on the day she vacated the premises. "Karen, I will purchase a new bed. We never engaged in any activities in this room. I do not believe a word you say, so kindly take the bed." The twins ignored me the entire time we were in the house. They did not even look back when Karen left. Thanks to my wealth and the status of a regular guy who achieved good results, the newspapers followed the divorce story. Public opinion was on my side. Most people thought Karen treated me poorly. 5 months later, the divorce was finalized. Unfortunately, I was obliged to pay child support for the twins. "Roger, it's Arthur, just calling to inform you that your divorce has become final today." "Thank you, Arthur. I have a few questions for you. May I contest the child support order? May I have my name removed from the twins' birth certificates?" "You may. One may challenge the child support claim, although this may require a significant investment of time. The biological father will be required to undergo a paternity test before any further action can be taken. It is likely that he will attempt to avoid the test altogether. However, there is another option that may be more expensive but will yield results more rapidly." "What alternative recourse is there?" "One may sue one's former spouse. The wife is accused of committing parental fraud. This would result in the removal of your name from the birth certificate and the possibility of reclaiming all child support paid since the divorce. If I subpoena her to court, I will ask her to name the father. She will be unable to refuse to answer under oath, which would allow you to sue the father for overdue child support. Please proceed with the aforementioned steps. Arthur will prepare the necessary documents and file them. I will do the same. I will inform you when Karen receives the documents." 3 days later, I was informed that Karen was served with documents regarding parental fraud. I expected a call from Karen's silence was somewhat worrisome. Arthur called to inform me that Karen's lawyer had requested a meeting. I instructed him to convey my lack of interest and that we would proceed in court on the scheduled hearing date. I accompanied Arthur to the proceedings, while Karen was accompanied by her lawyer. She appeared concerned. Her legal counsel was a representative from the law firm where she is employed. The hearing commenced with me articulating the rationale behind my legal action against Karen. I was subjected to questioning by Karen's legal counsel and Arthur following the midday recess. After lunch, Karen was confronted by the assembled lawyers. Her legal counsel adopted a more conciliatory approach, whereas Arthur was less accommodating. Miss Matthews, your former the plaintiff is suing the defendant for parental fraud at the recent divorce hearing. During the proceedings, the defendant admitted that the plaintiff is not the biological father of the plaintiff's 3 sons. The plaintiff seeks to have his name removed from the birth certificates and replaced with the biological father's name. Could you tell us who the biological father is? Karen sat silently, staring at the floor. I cannot divulge that information because it would have a detrimental impact on the biological father's family and his life. Karen replied, just like you destroyed. I considered the implications of this for myself. The judge's voice brought me back to reality. Miss Matthews, you are under oath. Please answer the question. Karen sat and stared straight ahead. She answered, speaking in a quiet voice that was almost a whisper. Speak up, Miss Matthews, the judge admonished. Karen Lawrence Rosenthal replied, then stared at the floor again. The young woman stood behind me and left the courtroom. Arthur addressed the judge. Your Honor, Miss Matthews has identified the biological father of her children. My client's sole objective is to have his name removed from the birth certificates. Arthur returned and took a seat next to me. The judge perused some documents. I have determined that Miss Matthews misled her former husband, leading him to believe he was the father of 3 children, despite the lack of evidence to support this claim. Miss Matthews, I have sentenced you to the judge then proceeded to impose a 6-month prison sentence, suspended for 2 years, on the understanding that the convicted party would appear in court for any offense committed during this period. In the event of such an offense being committed, the 6-month sentence would be added to any subsequent sentence. The convicted party, identified as Mr. Turner, responded in the affirmative, turning to me to confirm his understanding. The judge then pronounced, Mr. Turner, by the court's decision, your name will be removed from the birth certificates of Miss Matthews' children, since it has been proven that you are not the father. The court formally discharged the defendant from any financial obligations regarding child support. The judge thanked us and left the courtroom. Arthur gathered his papers, and we exited the courtroom. Arthur advised Miss Matthews to speak with Larry and inform him of the recent developments. He then expressed his hope that he would not have to interact with her again. Miss Matthews proceeded to address Arthur, stating that she was uncertain about her intentions regarding Mr. Rosenthal. Arthur cautioned her that Mr. Rosenthal had been served documents pertaining to child support just 10 minutes prior. He then inquired about the expediency of the service. Arthur replied that Marin had prepared the documents. The documents we required were merely the name of the intended recipient, which Karen provided. My assistant then proceeded to leave the courtroom to contact Marin. The papers were subsequently printed and handed to the waiting process server. Mr. Rosenthal was duly informed even before the hearing concluded. Arthur, the attorney, informed me that Rosenthal had fainted when he opened the envelope. He was subsequently transported via ambulance when Karen entered the office. This incident bears resemblance to events that transpired during my divorce proceedings. The newspapers were instrumental in disseminating information about the case. Larry Rosenthal gained notoriety when the newspapers hit the stores the next day. Through the media, I learned about the circumstances surrounding Rosenthal's downfall. His relationship with Karen, which contravened the company's policies, led to his dismissal. Additionally, Karen was also terminated. My legal action against Rosenthal reached its conclusion when his wife cleared him during the dissolution of their marriage. The court made a notation in his personal file indicating that he owed me £450. I was not anticipating to receive any compensation. Financial resources were not a significant concern for me. My primary objective was to inflict significant distress on Rosenthal, given the distress he had caused me. As anticipated, Karen has not communicated with me since the court proceedings. Rosenthal relocated to Karen's residence following his divorce from his wife. As far as I am aware, they remain together. Robert resides with me, but he has not acknowledged his biological father or mother in recent times. I divide my time between business and friends. I have a few friends with benefits, but none of them are serious, as I have no intention of getting married again. I have lived a lie for 20 years, which I consider to be more than sufficient. Thank you for your attention and interest. If you enjoyed this presentation, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment.